A homeless boy finds a dying man in an alley and saves him. But then he sees the man's face and freezes. It's the doctor who once let his mother die. What would you do? It was one of those nights where the cold cuts through your skin like glass, the kind of cold that makes the city quiet even in its busiest streets. And on a corner near a closed-down laundromat sat a boy, wrapped in a threadbare hoodie, clinging to a backpack that held everything he owned. His name was Micah. He was 12 years old and he was homeless. Micah didn't beg. He had tried that for a while, but the stares and the shame were harder to survive than hunger. He learned to make do. A half-eaten sandwich here, a jacket from a donation bin there. He knew which doors to avoid, which streets had the kind shopkeepers, and which corners the police wouldn't check. That night, he was getting ready to sleep under the plastic awning of a boarded-up bookstore when he heard it. A grunt, then a crash. He froze. There was someone in the alley. At first, he thought it might be someone dangerous, a drunk, maybe, or someone like the men who sometimes stole from him in the dark. But then he heard it again. A groan, weaker this time, a man's voice, painful, struggling. Micah stepped cautiously into the alley, and there he was, a man, maybe late 40s, lying twisted on the cold concrete, his shirt soaked in something dark, blood. His hand clutched his side. There was a smashed briefcase nearby, papers fluttering like ghosts in the winter wind. "Sir?" Micah whispered. The man didn't respond. Micah had seen enough pain in his short life to know this man was in trouble, deep trouble. He knelt down, unsure what to do. He checked the man's pockets, found a phone, but it was locked. Panic started to rise in his chest. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He ran, not away, but to the 24-hour diner across the street. He banged on the door. The cook inside shook his head until Micah pointed behind him. "Injured man! He's bleeding! Call someone, please!" Minutes later, sirens screamed down the block. As EMTs rushed in, Micah hovered by the alley's edge. Something gnawed at him, something oddly familiar about the man's face. And then it hit him like a punch straight to the heart. He'd seen that man before. It was the doctor 3 years ago, emergency room. His mother gasping for air, clutching her chest, a nurse pleading. And the doctor, a tall man with eyes too calm, saying, "No insurance, we can't help. She needs to go to county." They sent her away. She died in the taxi, and now that same man was bleeding in a cold alley, life slipping out of him. And Micah was the one who saved him. He felt his knees buckle, but he caught himself. He didn't know whether to scream, cry, or just walk away. But he stayed, not because the man deserved it, because Micah knew what it felt like to be left behind. As the paramedics lifted the stretcher, one of them turned to him. "You his son?" Micah shook his head. "No," he said quietly, "just someone who didn't walk away." But what happens when the one person you save is the reason you lost everything? Micah stood outside the hospital's sliding doors, unsure if he should go in. The ambulance had rushed away minutes ago, flashing lights swallowed by the night, but his legs wouldn't move. His stomach was twisted in knots. He'd just saved a man's life, but not just any man. The doctor who had once turned his mother away like she was nothing more than an inconvenience. Snow had started to fall, soft at first, the kind that feels almost magical, but Micah didn't feel wonder, just weight, the weight of remembering. He looked down at his shoes, too small, soles cracked, and as the snowflakes gathered on them, so did memories. 3 years ago wasn't so long, but it felt like another life. He remembered the smell of the waiting room, bleach and despair, his mother clutching her chest, gasping for breath, the receptionist barely looking up, a nurse rushing over, urgency in her voice, and then him. Dr. Charles Whitmore, perfectly ironed coat, voice calm, cold eyes. "No insurance," he'd said. "She needs to go to county." That sentence had echoed in Micah's head for years. He didn't understand how someone who took an oath to heal could just deny it. But they did. They sent her away. Micah had never stepped into a hospital since, but now, here he was. Inside, the bright fluorescent lights made him squint. Nurses walked briskly past. No one noticed the skinny kid with a torn backpack and too many shadows under his eyes. He slipped into the waiting area, sat in a corner, and tried to disappear. He wondered what would happen to the man. The doctor. Was he still unconscious? Did they know who he was? Did they know who Micah was? He wrestled with it, the temptation to leave, just vanish into the night. It would be poetic, wouldn't it? Leave him like they left her. But something inside him refused. Micah had nothing, not even a safe place to sleep. But he still had that small flame inside that said, be better than they were. A nurse passed by. She glanced at him, then paused. You here with someone, sweetheart? Micah nodded slowly. The man, the one who got brought in from 12th Street, I found him. The nurse's eyes softened. You called 911? Yeah. She smiled, a tired but kind smile. That was a brave thing to do. He's stable now, lost a lot of blood, but the team's working on him. Micah nodded. He wanted to feel relief, but instead, the weight pressed harder on his chest. Can I just wait here a bit? He asked. Of course, honey, I'll bring you some water. She walked off, and Micah slumped deeper into the chair. The memories wouldn't stop. The taxi ride. His mother whispering his name, holding his hand, then going silent. The moment the driver looked back and realized she was gone. Micah had been alone ever since, and now the universe had somehow looped back, put him face to face with the past. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. He didn't believe in fate, but maybe this was something else. A chance to confront the ghost that never left him, he pulled out the only photo he had, faded and crumpled, from his backpack. His mom, smiling, arm around him on the day he finished 3rd grade. He touched her face with his thumb. I don't know why I helped him, Mama, he whispered. Maybe because I wanted to feel like someone would have helped you, if they could. A loudspeaker crackled overhead, paging a code blue somewhere else in the building. Micah folded the photo back into his bag and exhaled. If he walked away now, no one would blame him. But deep down, he knew. He needed to see the man awake, to look him in the eye, to make him remember. Because sometimes, the only way to heal is to force someone to face what they broke. In the next part, Micah finds himself just feet away from the man who shattered his world. Only this time, the doctor is the one too weak to speak. And what happens when the victim holds all the power? Don't miss what's coming. Drop a like if your heart's racing, and make sure you're subscribed to see how this story twists next. The next morning came slowly, gray and unforgiving. Micah hadn't slept. He'd curled up in the corner of the hospital's waiting room, using his backpack as a pillow. No one kicked him out. Maybe it was the nurse, maybe it was fate. He didn't know. He just stayed. At dawn, a nurse gently tapped his shoulder. He's stable now. We've moved him to recovery. Micah blinked, the words not quite sinking in. He asked if anyone brought him in. Micah sat up, rubbing his eyes. Did you tell him? She hesitated. Only that someone found him. Do you want to see him? Micah didn't answer. He just stood up. She led him down a long hallway. The walls were a soft beige, but Micah felt like they were closing in. The scent of antiseptic, the hush of early morning rounds. It all dragged him back to the worst day of his life. They stopped at a door. He's still a little out of it, she said, but he's awake. Micah nodded, and she left him there. He stepped inside. The room was dim. Machines beeped steadily, and there in the bed, hooked up to IVs and monitors, was Dr. Charles Whitmore. He looked nothing like the man Micah remembered. He looked small, pale, breakable. His eyes were closed, but they opened slowly when Micah walked in. For a moment, their gazes locked. The doctor squinted, then looked away. Maybe he thought Micah was just another nurse. Maybe he didn't remember him at all. Micah stood in silence. The doctor's lips parted, his voice was hoarse. "You're the one who found me?" Micah nodded. There was a pause. "Thank you," the doctor said, closing his eyes again. Micah swallowed hard, his hands were clenched at his sides. So many things he wanted to say, to scream, to ask why. But instead he turned and left the room. He couldn't do it. Not yet. Not while the man was still broken, still helpless. Outside, he found the nurse again. She smiled. "He's lucky you were there." Micah gave a half nod. "Would you mind riding with him to the rehab center later today?" she asked. "He'll need a transfer, and he requested someone be with him. You don't have to, of course." Micah hesitated. Everything in him screamed to say no, but something else whispered, "Go. See this through." "I'll go," he said quietly. Hours later, they loaded the doctor into a medical transport van. Micah sat beside him, arms crossed, eyes staring out the window. The doctor was silent for most of the ride, breathing shallow but steady. Then, without turning, he spoke. "You remind me of someone." Micah didn't answer. "I can't remember their name, but I remember the feeling like I let them down." Micah turned to look at him. "You did." The doctor looked up, startled. "I was 9, Micah said, his voice calm but sharp. "My mom was dying. You said no insurance meant no help. You sent us away." The air in the van thickened. The doctor's face lost all color. Micah continued, eyes fixed on him. "She died in the taxi. Before we even got to county, you didn't just let her die. You made a choice." The doctor tried to speak, but no words came. Micah turned back to the window. "I thought I'd feel better saying it," he muttered, "but it just makes me feel empty." The doctor stared at him, lips trembling. "I remember now," he whispered. "God, I remember." Micah didn't look at him again for the rest of the ride. The silence that filled the space between them wasn't awkward. It was the sound of reality settling in, and for the first time in years, Dr. Charles Whitmore felt something more painful than any injury. He felt shame. Next, Micah faces a choice: walk away forever or hear the man out. But what the doctor confesses next, it will change everything. The rehab center wasn't fancy, it wasn't even particularly warm, but it was clean, quiet, and full of people trying to recover, physically, emotionally, or both. Dr. Charles Whitmore had been assigned a small corner room with a view of a parking lot. Micah sat in the armchair by the window, unsure why he was still there. The ride had ended. The confession had happened, and yet he hadn't walked away. The doctor stirred in his bed, adjusting his pillows. His face looked tired, not just from injury, but from something deeper, a weight that had finally surfaced. "You don't have to stay," he said softly. Micah didn't respond right away. "I know," he finally said, "but I want to." The doctor blinked at him, surprised. "Why?" Micah looked down at his hands. "Because I never got to ask you why you did it. Not until now." Dr. Whitmore looked away. He seemed smaller than ever, like his bones were folding in on themselves. "I was young, ambitious, caught up in numbers, rules, policies. I told myself I wasn't the villain, that I was just following the system." Micah's voice was quiet, but firm. "But she was dying." "I know," the doctor said, his voice cracking. "I remember her eyes. I remember the way you held her hand. And I remember the silence when the nurse begged me to reconsider." Micah stared at him. "So why didn't you?" Dr. Whitmore sighed. "Because I was afraid." Micah's brows furrowed. "I thought if I broke the rules once, it would open the door to chaos, that I'd lose control, my job, my career. I thought saving one person without insurance would lead to others demanding the same, and I'd be the one who broke protocol." He paused, choking on his guilt. And then I watched the news a week later, saw a report on your mom's death. I recognized the name. I couldn't sleep for weeks. Micah's jaw tightened. You still didn't reach out. I couldn't face what I'd done. Micah stood, anger flashing in his eyes. And you think this little talk is enough to make it right? No, the doctor said quietly. But I hoped it might be a start. Silence stretched between them. Then the nurse entered, breaking the tension. Oh, you're still here, she smiled at Micah. You know, most people wouldn't stay with a stranger like this. He's not a stranger, Micah muttered. Well, he's lucky to have you, she said, fluffing the doctor's pillows and checking his vitals. You got any family we can call for you, sweetheart? He's not a stranger, Micah muttered. Well, he's lucky to have you, she said, fluffing the doctor's pillows and checking his vitals. You got any family we can call for you, sweetheart? Micah hesitated. No, it's just me. The nurse frowned. Well, if you need anything, you let us know, okay? She left, and the room grew quiet again. Dr. Whitmore turned to him. You don't have anyone? Micah shook his head. Been on my own for a while now. The doctor's eyes softened. Where have you been staying? Here and there, shelters, streets, wherever I can. There was a long pause. Then the doctor said something Micah didn't expect. You don't have to go back out there. Micah blinked. What? I have a place, empty, safe. I know I can never undo what I did, but maybe I can at least make sure you're not alone anymore. Micah stared at him. He didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or curse. You think giving me a bed makes up for letting my mom die? No, the doctor replied. I think nothing ever could, but maybe, just maybe, it's not about making it up. Maybe it's about not making the same mistake again. Micah didn't answer, but he didn't walk out either. And for now, that was enough. Dr. Whitmore's house sat on a quiet suburban street, lined with identical mailboxes and evenly trimmed hedges. It looked like the kind of place where nothing bad ever happened. Micah stepped through the front door, his sneakers squeaking against the polished wood floor. It smelled like lemon cleaner and something faintly sterile, like the doctor had lived here, but hadn't really lived here in a long time. Make yourself at home, the doctor said, gesturing to the living room. He still moved slowly, his side bandaged and his steps careful. Micah hovered near the doorway, unsure what to do with himself. A part of him didn't want to sit, didn't want to be comfortable in a house that belonged to the man who had once chosen rules over humanity. But he stayed. As the afternoon wore on, they fell into a strange rhythm, quiet, awkward, tense. Dr. Whitmore offered him food. Micah accepted a sandwich. They watched a little TV. The silence between them was filled with 1,000 unsaid things. Finally, as the sun dipped low, Micah couldn't hold it in anymore. I need to know something, he said, staring at the muted television screen. The doctor looked over. Why my mom? Micah said. Out of all the patients, all the people you could have helped, why did it have to be her? The doctor's face fell. I ask myself that every day, he said softly. Sometimes I think it was just bad timing. I had just gotten chewed out by administration that morning. We were told to stop bending rules, to follow insurance protocols exactly. I was angry, frustrated. And then your mom came in. Micah's voice hardened. So you took it out on her? No, the doctor said. But I didn't fight for her. And that's almost worse. Micah stood up, pacing. You didn't fight, you just let her go. You saw a woman in pain, a kid begging beside her, and you just looked away. The doctor didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He just nodded. You're right. Micah stopped. That wasn't what he expected. He expected excuses, denial, something to push against. But the doctor's quiet acceptance only made it worse. I thought I hated you, Micah said, voice cracking. I told myself if I ever saw you again, I'd scream, I'd hurt you, I'd make you feel what I felt. And now? I don't know, Micah whispered. I feel empty, like no amount of yelling would bring her back. The doctor looked at him with tears in his eyes. She was strong, even in pain. I remember the way she smiled at you, the way she whispered your name. You were her whole world. Micah sat down, burying his face in his hands. I just wanted her to be okay. I know, the doctor said, and I failed her. I failed you. They sat in silence. This time it wasn't cold. It was heavy, shared. I've done a lot of things in my career, the doctor continued. Surgeries, lives saved, promotions, but none of it ever erased that one moment, that one choice. Micah wiped his face, voice steadier now. Then why didn't you ever try to find me? The doctor took a deep breath. I did. I called shelters, looked through missing persons reports. I even went back to county, asked around, but you were already gone. I didn't have a name, just a memory. Micah nodded slowly. I didn't want to be found. I thought it'd be easier to disappear. The doctor looked down. I think part of me was relieved I couldn't find you. Because if I did, I'd have to face you. Face what I did. Micah leaned back, exhaustion settling in. I don't forgive you, he said. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't expect you to. But I'm tired of carrying this hate around. The doctor nodded. So am I. Coming up next, the most unexpected twist. Micah opens a letter his mother left behind, one that changes how he sees everything. The next few weeks were slow, quiet. Healing doesn't happen all at once, and not just the physical kind. Micah stayed. He didn't plan to. He told himself it was temporary, just until he figured things out, just until the snow stopped, just until the doctor got better. But days turned into weeks, and still he stayed. Each morning he'd hear the soft creak of the doctor's steps as he moved from his bedroom to the kitchen. Each night they'd eat in silence, then sometimes talk, about simple things at first, the weather, news, books, then deeper things, mistakes, regrets, memories. Micah learned things he never expected. The doctor had once been a father. He'd lost a daughter to cancer when she was 8. He hadn't talked about her in years. She was tough, the doctor said one night, eyes fixed on the table. Way tougher than me. Micah listened. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was understanding. And sometimes, that's the beginning. Micah started going to school again. The doctor helped enroll him, got him a new backpack, clean clothes, a place to sleep that didn't smell like mildew and fear. One afternoon, while cleaning out an old box, Micah found something he hadn't seen in years, a letter. His mother's handwriting on the envelope, tucked in the lining of the backpack he'd carried since that night. He sat on the edge of the bed and stared at it for a long time before opening it. Micah, if you're reading this, it means something has happened, and my heart breaks thinking of you alone. But I need you to know something. People will hurt you. Sometimes the world won't make sense, and sometimes the people you expect to help will walk away. But I want you to promise me one thing. Don't let the world harden you. World harden. You have a kind heart. You've had it since the day you were born, and no matter what happens, keep it. That heart will be your strength. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about freeing yourself. I love you, always. Mom Micah didn't cry right away. He just read the letter 3 times, then he folded it carefully and put it in the top drawer of the nightstand. That night, he didn't just eat dinner with the doctor, he talked, really talked about his mom, about his years on the street, about how every day he'd wished someone would just see him. I see you now, the doctor said, and Micah believed him. They weren't family, not yet, maybe not ever in the traditional sense, but something was forming. A thread, a tie, a scar healing. Micah started drawing again, something he hadn't done since third grade. The doctor found one of his sketches and framed it. He started doing better in school. The principal called once to say, "Micah's different, focused, driven. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." Micah overheard the doctor say, "It's not me, it's him. He's always had it. I just gave him a place to find it again." And for the first time in years, Micah smiled, genuinely. There were still hard days, days when Micah woke up sweating, heart pounding from dreams of his mother's final breath, days when the doctor stared too long at an old photo of his daughter. But they faced those days together, not as strangers bound by guilt and pain, but as two people who, against all odds, had saved each other. Spring came slow that year, but when it did, it brought with it the kind of light Micah hadn't felt in a long time. He stood in the doorway of the school auditorium, fidgeting with the sleeves of a dress shirt 2 sizes too big. The place was packed. Students, parents, teachers, everyone buzzing with energy, and somewhere in the crowd, near the middle row, sat Dr. Whitmore. Micah spotted him immediately. He was holding a small sign that read, "You did it, Micah." Their eyes met, and the doctor gave a small, proud nod. It was Micah's first time on stage since elementary school. He'd been selected to speak at the Youth Art Showcase. His drawings had won an award, and now, somehow, he was supposed to give a speech. He stepped up to the microphone, palms sweaty, heart racing. "I used to live on the streets," he began. "No fancy opener, just truth. People passed me every day and didn't see me. I didn't expect them to. I thought being invisible was normal." He paused, scanning the room. But then, one night, something changed. I helped someone I didn't want to help, someone I blamed for everything, and in that moment, I realized I didn't want to be angry anymore. I just wanted a chance. Micah's voice grew steadier. And I got one. I got a home. I got a school. I got my life back. Not because someone owed it to me, but because someone decided to make things right. He took a deep breath. We can't undo the past, but we can decide what we do next. That's what matters. Applause erupted, but Micah barely heard it. His eyes were locked on Dr. Whitmore, who stood with everyone else, clapping with tears in his eyes. Later that evening, back at the house, Micah placed the small award on the mantel. "Looks good there," the doctor said, handing him a glass of juice. Micah grinned. "We should build a shelf, you know, in case I win more." They both laughed. That night, as they cleaned up dinner, Micah looked around the room, the pictures on the wall, the drawings, the jackets hanging by the door, the warmth. It was a home, his home. "You know," he said suddenly, "you never told me your daughter's name." The doctor paused, dish in hand. "Lila? That's beautiful. She would have liked you." Micah smiled. "Maybe she helped me find you." The doctor nodded. Maybe she did. As the weeks passed, they found comfort in their routine. They planted flowers in the backyard, painted the garage, even rescued a stray cat that Micah named Chance. On one quiet evening, Micah sat beside the doctor on the porch. "You ever think about going back to the hospital?" he asked. "Every day," the doctor replied. "But not as a doctor, maybe as a volunteer, maybe with kids. I think you'd be good at that. You'd better come with me." Micah laughed. "Deal." There was no magic moment when everything became perfect. But there were small ones, moments of grace, moments where the past didn't hurt as much, moments where forgiveness didn't feel so impossible. Micah kept his mother's letter in a frame on his nightstand. He read it often, and each time it reminded him of what she asked. Don't let the world harden you. He didn't. Instead, he softened the world around him, bit by bit, with kindness, with truth, with the decision to keep showing up, even when it hurt, even when it would have been easier to walk away. If this story moved you, even just a little, hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs hope. And most of all, subscribe for more stories that remind us. Sometimes redemption doesn't come in grand gestures, but in the quiet choice to be better. Thanks for watching.